I'm just going to go and close the door. I can't believe that I've gone live straight away with no hiccup, apparently so far. Now, just wait a few minutes and hopefully somebody will say hello. Yay, Steph, we're live. No technical hiccups. Have I jinxed myself right at the beginning? Bear with me. I'm just going to close the door. Oh, safety first. Pajama pants. Class act. Well, welcome and good morning, everyone. And I'm just trying to get my eyes around the new screen. I'm using StreamYard as the platform that I'm streaming from. And for the first time in every time, so this is my fourth live streaming, and it's the first time I've had no technical difficulties in setting up. Good morning, Sharon. Haven't you had a fantastic roller coaster uplifting week? All right. Oh, God, I've got the sings in me, haven't I? Well, here we are, and I'm in the backest room of my house. So far, we've done live streaming from 4 different places in my house. This place seems to be the most comfortable. I do have the window directly in front of me, which is causing me to feel a bit glary. Good morning, Paula, and good morning, Lynn, and good morning, Rhonda. This platform's really, really facilitating me really well to be able to converse, and I can see everything coming in. As I've let you know, today we're going to have a bit of a chat about imposter syndrome. And I know that it is particularly rampant in our area when a person is choosing to show their creativity, whether it just simply be creating for the love and the joy of the process, or formalizing it into a small business online, or taking each progressive step further and further and being seen. The imposter syndrome can visit you frequently, try and cohabitate, try and live with you and be your best friend, but it's a fake friend. The imposter syndrome talks about the notion of you feeling like the fraud and the fear of being discovered that you don't know what you're doing and that you're winging it, when in fact the real fraud in the relationship with the imposter syndrome is the imposter syndrome itself. So I'm just going to start off today by just quickly diverging to what Miss Colourberry's been up to. Unfortunately for us in Australia, it's going to be more difficult for us to obtain her new products. She's got 2 new products, and I'm going to give you a quick preview of one of them. It's directly from her Instagram feed. So the clip itself is 5 minutes long, and we're not going to watch it for 5 minutes. But I just wanted you to have a look if you haven't come across it yet. And that's her new resin.
Das eigentlich schon seit längerer Zeit ein eigenes Resin.
Look how nice and thick it seems to be.
Aber ich habe mich an die ganze Sache nicht so ganz herangetraut. Ich war lange auf der Suche nach jemandem, der mir
I might just put the sound down. That's it. So let's get that in a better angle for you and over that way. It's counterintuitive. She did a lot of negotiations and found the perfect partner for her who listened to exactly what she wanted in her resin. And she has come up with something that looks incredibly luxurious. And note that the consistency is on the thicker side, which is perfect for her considering she does the geode form being her primary technique. So that's exactly what is, it's on keep watching. Do you want to keep watching while I chat? That's the man who's made it with her. So she's got it clear of all thick fillers and binders that are just there for no apparent reason, and got quite a clean resin happening. And the UV testing on it that she shows through the clip is really, really promising. So I would love to get my hands on some of this and just give it a whirl. It being European, it's and located overseas in that region is going to make it quite costly for us. But you never know. I think Archery Creations in Victoria do stock a bit of colourberry products, so you never know. Maybe Tamara will bring some over for us. Wouldn't that be cool? All right, so that's the other thing that Miss Colourberry's brought out is a product called Bubble Be Gone. And it's a spray that you put over the top of your resin product so that you don't, or your resin art, so that you're not having to apply heat to get rid of your bubbles. And that is perfect, because have you ever noticed that when you need to get rid of bubbles, sometimes the heat can make your resin thinner and you get a shift and change in your effect. This Bubble Be Gone spray dissolves into the resin and becomes part of the resin. So it must be some kind of alcohol-based product, but it can't be 100% pure alcohol, because as we know, if we spray alcohol directly onto our resin, that causes A, another effect, and B, tackiness and stickiness if you put too much upon curing. But off I go, and off I went on a whole complete different tangent, and I feel like I could keep talking about that stuff for ages. But that's not what we're here for today. We're here to have a really good talk about imposter syndrome and helping us as creatives feel more confident within ourselves to take the steps forward that we need to be successful. And at this point, I will talk briefly about what the measure of success is for you, because it may just simply be making a My screen did the black circle thing. So I hope that if there was a small interruption in the live flow, that it's resolved itself quickly. At this point, given that I was given a natural interval, I will have a cup of tea. And Rhonda noticed my hair. Rhonda, because I've got quite a bit of light on me, you can't really see the depths of my hair. Let me just turn this light off. See, it's quite purple. I love my purple hair. All right, I'm having a sip of tea, and then we're getting right into the guts of that imposter syndrome, and we're going to say and tell the imposter syndrome that lives inside of our head that it's the imposter and we're doing okay. Got my mug of jug of tea. Slip. Thanks for hanging in with me. My eyes are flicking around the screen now for me to... Good morning, Nina. My eyes are flickering around the screen now for me to find where I can see how long I've been talking for. 8 minutes. That's pretty good. Nina says good morning to everyone. By the way, Nina, I sent you a message via Instagram because I need to have your new release molds, because I want to use them and show everyone how spectacular they are. But that's off topic again. Right, let's get back to imposter syndrome. So we know, and we hear the term loosely thrown around, imposter syndrome. I personally don't quite like the name of it, but, you know, labels, what can you do? But it really implies the notion that there is a nagging feeling inside of you that you are not what you say you are. And we're going to keep this in context of our creative spirits. So for us, and I will now say for me, the imposter syndrome comes in when I fear that people will go, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. How would you know? You haven't even been doing this very long. You know, and it's all those little triggering statements that cause the inner critic inside of you's volume to go up extraordinarily high, and all of a sudden that's all you can hear. I did put this up on one of my feeds, but I'm going to read it out to you because this is a little bit of an assessment to see just how strongly imposter syndrome lives within you. And here you go. Just count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 statements. Just count how many yeses you get. And if you feel brave enough, pop how many yeses you got in the comments so that we can together recognize that we all experience this somehow. And one of the ways to get through imposter syndrome is actually talking about it and recognizing that it is a much more phenomenon. That means common phenomenon, occurrence within people across the board, but particularly in creative people, because we are putting our stuff out for critique from the rest of the world. Here we go. The first statement is, I admire people who have achieved what I aspire to, but I don't think I belong in their ranks. That was 1. 2, I feel like a lot of my successes were a matter of luck. 3, I feel foolish or uncomfortable describing my achievements. 4, when I'm around other people in my field, I tend to feel they deserve their place in it more than I do. 5, I worry that people will realize how little I know. 6, when people praise me, I feel like I'm not able to receive the compliment well, or that I'm even getting away with something like, phew, they didn't notice. And I say that one in particular in regards to outcomes of art pieces. I go, phew, they didn't notice that little bit of something that is annoying me. 7, I can't believe that my successes will last. And 8, I feel like my successes don't really prove anything. So there's many other ways that a person can experience imposter syndrome. And as I was saying, it really doesn't matter where you are in regards to that level of success and how you define success. Imposter syndrome is a mindset, and it is the inner critic coming out and tapping you on the shoulder and causing you to self-doubt, talk yourself down, feel the absence of confidence, making you turn your shine off, and not able to hear or believe what other people are saying about you or your work in a positive frame. You know, you'll come back to them with, somebody will say, oh, that's a gorgeous piece, I really love it. And then you will, instead of being gracious and saying, thank you, I'm going to stop saying you because it's actually me. I'm doing that projection thing. Someone will say to me, oh, that piece of work is really gorgeous, I really love blah, blah, blah. And I'll go, instead of saying, oh, thank you so much, and just allowing and accepting that moment of compliment, my imposter syndrome goes, oh, yeah, but, and I'll point out all these flaws, which, by the way, as we all know, aren't really flaws. They're just creative preference, because in our form of art, there is no flaw except, well, even if you did get your elbow stuck in your paw and it made a completely unexpected pattern in it, it's still a piece of art. Art is subjective. Creativity is subjective. And I think that for us as creative persons, the notion of being out on display to be critiqued on our subjective matter makes us even all the more vulnerable to imposter syndrome. So, oh, Nina says I look stunning, and here comes me. Thank you. Thank you. I was just talking about my beautiful purple tint hair. I do love it. And there's a few more good mornings. All right. So where does imposter syndrome come from? You can research that yourself, because today we really want to find out how we can help ourselves when we hear it coming up within ourselves. And the first thing that we want to do is recognize that it's probably and most likely part of the anxiety family. So if you tend to have higher anxiety in situations or attached to certain things, you're going to notice that you have increased imposter syndrome as well. Now, one thing that you can do straight away is acknowledge that it's there. And we also know that just by accepting something, it can help soften it. And this is in regards to anything across the board with thinking patterns and behavior patterns and even physical patterns. You know, for myself, having to accept that I had put on 20 kilos due to giving up smoking was the first part of me feeling more comfortable with being able to address it rather than just being grumpy and angry and uncomfortable in my body. Now, whilst it's not exactly the same example, it's still talking about accepting the issue for what it is rather than just being grumpy at it and trying to resist it. And through that way, you can develop a relationship with what it is you need to do to overcome it. And with imposter syndrome, the first thing we need to be able to do is identify our thought patterns. And so a really useful thing for you to do when you have the time, or even make it a priority for yourself, is to write down all the thoughts and statements that trigger you into feeling like, oh my God, I'm not good enough. Oh my God, what if people, you know, the things that make you double question yourself, even triple question yourself. Trying to think of an example for you, but one's not coming to mind right now. So if one's not coming to mind right now, and now you're going to double doubt that I don't even know what I'm talking about. So here comes the imposter syndrome. I can't think of an example. Does this mean that my whole little giving of inspirational points is going to fail because I've failed in one tiny area? And it's really not even a failure, is it? It's just I couldn't come up with an example. Fortunately, though, the example itself was the failure of the example became the example. So that was a lucky bridgeway for me. Now it's time for a sip of cup of tea. Nina says all the above for her in regards to imposter syndrome. Nina is a person who will continually be having to battle imposter syndrome as she puts out regularly and consistently new products to the industry that will critique it. And somehow we get the word critique mixed up with negative feedback. Critique, maybe we should start saying assess, or just having a look at, or considering the product. But Nina is one brave woman, because there rarely is a month that doesn't go past without her pushing her own capacity and feeling the discomfort. And I've had these conversations with her. At the front of her social platform media, you see a beautiful, strong, confident woman. Yet behind the scenes, she works incredibly hard. Her success is based on determination, perseverance, and pushing through those not moments, hours and days. I'll just have a sip of cup of tea. I still haven't had it. So there's been some articles about imposter syndrome apparently being more prevalent in women, but really the notion of imposter syndrome became a topical point of discussion sort of in the 80s. It came up in the 70s, was point of discussion in the 80s, and became really popular in the last 10 years. I don't really think that it is more prevalent in women. I think we're still suffering the men don't talk enough about their own insecurities, and they do that as a way of coping so that nobody sees their insecurities. I think it's back again now, Paula. I did pause when I saw the black circle thing. So I'm taking a leap of confidence to say that more current research says that imposter syndrome is equally prevalent in men and women. Many, many famous people have expressed statements that suggest or imply that they have experienced imposter syndrome. Meryl Streep, she's won so many Academy Awards and is well acclaimed and regarded. And she goes through the process of every time she's offered a film opportunity, she double questions, does anyone really want to see me in yet another film? I don't really do it that well, and my academies aren't real. The ones that I've won aren't really based on my performance. They're based on the whole team's, and so that's present in her. I'm just looking through my notes here because, yes, Michelle Pfeiffer, she says, I still think people will find out that I'm not really very talented and I'm not very good, and that, in fact, my acting is all just a big sham. And Kate Winslet says, sometimes I wake up in the morning before going off to a shoot and I think, I can't do this. I'm a fraud. I have no idea what I'm doing. So, and even Albert Einstein expressed at some point that he could not understand what all the fuss was about in regards to his certain ways of thinkings and theoretical presentations to the science work. He didn't believe that he needed all of that or deserved all of that acclaim that he was getting. And yet, look at that 100 years down the track. Okay. So that is what imposter syndrome is. And yes, we all do have it. So the first thing that we need to do is connect the dots. And the dots can often be just about acknowledging where the imposter syndrome might have come from. Now, for me, I don't really believe too much in going backwards into your history so much. And that might just be a preferred thing because, boy, I don't really like looking back into my own history. But for you, if you can work out where you first heard certain critical comments and recognize that maybe they've hooked into you, and then try and dissolve them and say, well, I did get that comment once all that time ago related to that context, and this is a whole different scenario now, you may be able to dissolve or dilute some of that intense feeling that you're getting. So things like, to help you counteract the negative components, think about all of the hard work and time and effort you've put in to get to where you are now and what your current achievements are. And think about it more than just what your end results are. Like, don't just look at what your art is. Look at the skills that you've developed. Look at the mindset that you've developed, and especially the one that we don't look at a lot, and that's the one called perseverance. So many of us have an enormous amount of perseverance in regards to our creativity. We do the same thing over and over again with minor tweaks in order to get the outcome that we are searching for, or even better is when we get an unexpected, glorious outcome that we weren't searching for, but it rewards us. And that perseverance is an incredible mindset. Secretly, I wish I could take my perseverance that I have in this area of my life into other areas. Okay, and look at the facts in regards to how you got to where you are. And if that's all being just doing your first posting your first creation up into a Facebook group, that takes enormous courage. You feel somehow that you're going into competition with everyone around you. And again, this is one of my biggest things that I talk about. Your Facebook group is your forum, and your forum is your collaborative point, and it's your support team. Our Facebook groups are here to help support us. They're not our competition, and they're not who we sell to either. It's just where we draw our inspiration from. That being said, even if you're quite aware of that, putting your stuff out there for appraisal, critique, feedback is incredibly brave. And the more you do it, the more you can either double doubt yourself. Fortunately, we have very good, supportive, kind people in the majority of the groups who will give you fair criticism and support up your successes and help you problem solve the things that didn't work so well. Okay. Test your assumptions. The assumption being I'm a fake. Are you really a fake, or are you just having a moment of faking it till you make it? Now, a lot of there's a lot of pressure on us at the moment, and has been for about the last 5 years. People talk about stepping into your real authentic self, but at the same time maintaining a sense of confidence, portraying passion. But what if confidence isn't your authentic self? What if you're not naturally a confident person? So the messages are around being your authentic self in itself can be a double-edged sword, or call for you to turn on areas of yourself more than what you really would in real life. The point being is that if you have to fake it till you make it, that's okay, but it's not about you being an imposter. It's about you bolstering up areas that you can draw on for strengths. And the one that I'm thinking of right now is presenting and being confident in front of the camera. It can be quite nerve-wracking. Have you considered the notion of ever opening up a YouTube channel and knowing that when you put your stuff out there, it's more than just this presentation now. This is live. I can't undo anything that I say. It's nerve-wracking for me. And I would say I'm a fairly confident person, even though I do battle my own internal double doubting. My imposter syndrome comes more from the notion of having to produce incredible art to substantiate and validate my position of being a teacher. That is where my imposter syndrome sits. And the extraordinary thing about it is that the more that I teach, the less time I have to apply my time and dedication into creating pieces that will squelch that belief system that I have, which is false, by the way. I'm quite aware that it's false, but yet it lives inside of me quite strongly. And when you have a look at the way that the imposter syndrome sits within you and the rubbish it feeds you, even when you identify it false, it helps you turn its voice down, but doesn't necessarily eradicate it. The sooner you can identify that voice is there and where it's coming from a false perspective, remembering that imposter syndrome itself is the imposter in this. When we can keep calling it the faker, we can feel much stronger within ourselves and able to disengage from the rubbish it's feeding us in our head. All right. The next thing you can do to help yourself with your imposter feelings and thoughts is to reassess your strengths. Go back through what it is you've done to get to where you are and make a list of everything you've done to achieve your successes. And remember, successes can be judged or assessed differently from person to person. But more often than not, every single one of us is going through a massive learning curve. And the learning curves go like this. Here, where's that hand? It goes learning curve, learning curve, learning curve. Oh, I've got it. Oh, learning curve, learning curve, learning curve. Oh, I've got it. Oh, learning curve, learning curve. And at times you feel like you're going to fall backwards off the learning curve, but you're always learning and growing. And that imposter syndrome will sometimes come in and say, well, if you're still learning and still growing, then you haven't got it. That's so true. If you've stopped learning and growing, I think that would be a big problem. So I think that's about it on imposter syndrome. I feel that I may indeed do something a little bit more structured and pop it up on YouTube so that you can follow the flow of imposter syndrome and really get it nailed down in a more regulated manner, because I'm suffering imposter syndrome now and going in my head, I'm saying I'm such a scatty person. Did what I say come across clearly? Was it meaningful? And will it make an impact and help anyone? So it's so interesting the way that it just sneaks on in. But that's it on imposter syndrome. And hi, Tony. It's lovely to see you. I'm going to sign out now. I'm heading up to Wodonga again for the weekend. I'm house hunting. I'm looking for places to run workshops as well from that region on a permanent basis. Though I still will be teaching in Ballarat, Daylesford, Pakenham, and really, I'm trying to negotiate something in Coffs Harbour at the moment. How exciting. Next week, we've got Casey Corbin from America joining us live. It'll be my first live interview. That will be exciting. He's going to be talking to us all about how to manage the highs and lows that come with the Christmas period. And the pattern usually being that if you've prepared yourself now, you should have a good amount of stock to sell off and give lots of people great Christmas presents and feel really cool. And then in January, people pull back on their buying, back on their attending workshops. Often it's because they've already spent their budgeted money for that period of time. Often it's because it's time to spend time with the family. But how do we cope with that when we're trying to, keep pushing forward? Casey is really well known in the American flow art industry and is one of the greatest teachers of teaching people how to teach. And he also has a fantastic, substantial Facebook group called How to Sell Your Art. So after this, I will put that link down in the descriptions. If you're just happening to tune in, please remember to subscribe, and please let me thank you all for your ACE support. I really love doing what I'm doing, and I would love to be able to serve you all more in helping you grow in your mind as well as your technique. The more that you grow in your technique, the stronger you'll need to be in your mind to be able to push through things like imposter syndrome. So when one shines, we all shine. Over and out. See you next week. End broadcast.